Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. According to New Zealand police statements, authorities have ordered evacuations across low-lying parts of New Zealand's North Island after heavy rain and strong winds caused flooding, landslides and road closures, with police confirming a man is missing after being swept away in his vehicle. National Forecaster Service has issued life-threatening weather warnings. Spain's Foreign Minister José Manuel Alvarez said in New Delhi that a historic India-European Union free trade deal is likely to be concluded within days, with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen expected in India ahead of the January 27 summit to finalize the details, while India and Spain also discussed stronger defense ties. China has begun emergency food aid to Cuba, with the first shipments of rice arriving as the island faces worsening food and fuel shortages after Venezuelan oil supplies were halted amid tightened US sanctions. Furthermore, Beijing will send a total of 30,000 tons of rice under the new aid program. China has condemned a suicide attack on a Chinese restaurant in Kabul that killed at least 7 people, including 1 Chinese national and 6 Afghan, with Foreign Ministry spokesman Guo Hiakin saying Beijing will make urgent representations, while ISIS-K claimed responsibility for the attack as investigations by Taliban continue. Mohammad Nadal Al-Shar met with India's Chart d'Affaires Renu Yadav in Damascus to push for stronger trade, investment and economic cooperation, including expanding joint coordination and boosting bilateral exchange. Amid the escalation between NATO and the US over Greenland, President Trump has again slammed NATO, saying he has saved the alliance from the ash heap of history. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has reaffirmed his country's support for Greenland and Denmark's sovereignty at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Venezuela's National Assembly President Jorge Rodriguez has announced broad reforms in the law amid the new political context following the capture of Nicolas Maduro by a US military operation. Let's start with news now on NATO. Secretary General Mark Rutte has responded to US President Donald Trump's doubts about European support in case of a security threat. At the World Economic Forum, Rutte has firmly stated that European allies would indeed come to US's defense in case Article 5 of NATO's founding treaty is triggered. Let's hear that statement.
Said last night in his presser that he was doubtful whether the Europeans would come to the rescue if Article 5 would be triggered. I tell him, yes, they will. And they did on the 11th of September 9/11 in 2001, when for the first and only time Article 5 was triggered. I have no doubt the US will come to the rescue here, we will come to the rescue of the US, and we need each other for our collective.
NATO's Mark Rutte has also addressed the rising tension over Greenland. He stated that thoughtful diplomacy is the only way to resolve the dispute. Rutte's comments come as President Trump advocates for US claims over Greenland, a move that has stirred a major debate within NATO. Additionally, Rutte has reassured that behind-the-scenes efforts are ongoing. The public comments remain limited. Speaking on Arctic security, he has called for a broader discussion, stressing the importance of defending the Arctic, Atlantic and Europe. Most importantly, Rutte has dismissed any fears that the Greenland situation could lead to the collapse of NATO. All right, joining me in this discussion now is retired Lieutenant Colonel Himanshi Singh, who's Defense and International Relations Analyst from New Delhi. Thank you very much, retired Lieutenant Colonel, for joining me in this discussion. Firstly, how do you see the fact that Trump is still asking for the European Union and expecting it to provide security in case of a threat when he himself has threatened European Union with his bid to acquire Greenland and the retaliatory tariffs?
See, we all know that what is happening around the world, especially on Greenland. So when this statement comes that Europe would help protect US, it's a masterclass actually. This masterclass has been specially designed for Trump administration, because we know that when 9/11 happened, Europe collectively sent their troops, their brothers, their fathers. They had gone to fight for US. So when US is becoming too greedy with Greenland, I think such a masterclass is needed. But Rutte is attempting for three major objectives. First is ego appeasement of Trump, because we know Trump has been complaining that Europe is a freeloader, and by offering a concrete protection, Europe frames itself as a paying contributor and not a freeloader. Then there is a strategic denial. Trump's primary argument of acquiring Greenland is Denmark is too weak to defend itself from Russia or China. So thereby it endangers American security. But when Europe pledges that American assets are safe, and he removes this premise of Donald Trump's argument, I think if they say that they can secure island and US doesn't need to own it, he's making a big move. Then, militarily, if you see that this is a shift in NATO assets. Now we expect to see more naval patrols in the area of North Atlantic. New radar installations, which will be, maybe funded by EU and NATO, and common funds, not just Denmark, but everybody together. So they may create a permanent NATO Arctic command, so which will help in securing US interest also. And it is a very, very, thoughtful diplomacy is the way out, because one must understand why US specifically views Greenland as non-negotiable, because GI-UK gap during the Cold War, which is the Greenland, Ireland and UK gap, was the choke point for Soviet submarines. So in 2026, with the ice melting in the Arctic, I think High North is becoming a highway, and China calling itself a near Arctic state. Russia is already remilitarizing its north coast. So Greenland is no doubt a central cork in this bottle. So they are basically trying to de-escalate the situation and make, offers which are palatable to US. Over to you, Kriti.
All right, sure. Do stay on with me, Lieutenant Colonel, as we proceed. Because in fact, there's some breaking news information coming in. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to meet US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff on 22 January. The Kremlin confirmed the talks are on the president's schedule. Witkoff is expected to travel to Moscow from the World Economic Forum in Davos. He will be accompanied by Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law. Kushner has also been tasked with helping negotiate an exit from the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The meeting follows a flurry of diplomatic contacts on the sidelines of the Davos Forum. All right, requested retired Lieutenant Colonel Himanshu Singh to join me back in the discussion here. How do you see this meeting now? Should we expect any major breakthrough to come out of it? Because it's apparent how Trump has shifted his full attention on the Russia-Ukraine war peace dialogue, with his interventions in Venezuela and his bid over Greenland and his own domestic politics.
See, we all know that US is going to have its midterm elections in this year. So Trump is basically trying two ways of policies. One is inward and one is outward. He has to make the promises which he had made to his voters and the people who financed his entire funding for the election campaign. So he has to pacify them. Then he has to follow the Monroe Doctrine and the doctrine which is there by the Pentagon. So he's basically trying to manage both fronts, and he has already done a lot of damage by capturing the Venezuelan president. Ukraine war, it's more than 4 years, it's not over, which he had promised during his elections. And when President Putin had come to Alaska, there was no breakthrough. Zelensky has been meeting him and he has been getting humiliated time and again. But with this new Greenland crisis coming, I think Trump has more foes than friends. So this is a time where he must try and do something very concrete. I think this meeting with the Russian president will definitely have some breakthrough, because a 4 years old long war is not fruitful for Russia or Ukraine, because the point was that Russia never wanted yet NATO to come to its doorsteps. Now NATO's attention is somewhere else. So I think this is the right time, and already Italian premier had suggested that it is time to talk to Russia, not just Ukraine. So in the NATO area also, there are a lot of people who want now something very substantial to come out of these talks. So I think it is going to be a breakthrough, and we may hear a very good news soon by both parties and America reaching some conclusion. And I think this will definitely be a breakthrough.
What do you make of Trump's relationship with Putin? It's been marked with some layers of inconsistencies. He's always also threatened tariffs, while he's also maintained a cordial approach. How do you see that relationship? Of course, the US clearly does not see Russia as a threat, but where do you point out the inconsistencies that have remained?
Kriti, if you closely watch Mr. Donald Trump, he's not inconsistent. He has been following every word which he has uttered or promised. Most of the things were part of his doctrine. As far as his relationship with Putin is concerned, he personally likes Putin, but Putin himself is a very, very strong president, and he means business. So when two strong personalities, they clash, you know, whether they are friends or they are enemies or whatever, it is the war of equals. So Trump very well knows he cannot mess with Putin. Putin is a very smart, sharp player who did not react when the vessels of Russia was confiscated near Venezuela. He did not react. He is taking his time. Whether Trump puts more tariffs or he continues with tariff, Russia is least affected with this, because every time there is a war, Russian economy booms because of the equipment they are making, which is military grade and war related equipment. So Trump very well knows that he cannot mess with Putin, and he doesn't want to mess with Putin because he wants a strong Russia which can actually bully NATO. He wants somebody very strong, because otherwise the game doesn't become very interesting. So his personal relationship with Putin is good. However, they do not gel well on a lot of issues. And as I earlier brought out, that Putin's only hatred towards Zelensky or the Ukraine was that he did not wanted NATO to come to its doorsteps. So once NATO is diverted, I think we will have a breakthrough, and Trump will be able to strike something more meaningful with Russia.
All right, do stay on with me, retired Lieutenant Colonel. Moving ahead, viewers, let's also tell you that in a tense escalation of rhetoric, President Donald Trump has warned that Iran would be wiped off the face of the earth if Tehran succeeded in assassinating the US president. This came in response to Iranian threats against Trump's life following an announcement of Iranian General Fazl Shekarchi, who vowed that Iran would retaliate forcefully if their supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was attacked. In an interview with American media, Trump reiterated his previous stance, saying Iran's actions would lead to obliteration if they targeted US leaders. Meanwhile, in Iran, there are reports of over 4,000 deaths from violent crackdowns by government on protesters, with estimates reaching as high as 20,000. Amid these tensions, international voices, including Nobel laureate Shirin Ebadi, are calling for targeted US actions against Iran's leadership. The situation remains highly volatile, with both countries posturing for a potential conflict. All right, request retired Lieutenant Colonel Himanshu Singh to join me back in the discussion here. Lieutenant Colonel, what do you make? How is there any possibility of these threats turning into reality, or is it mere rhetoric at this point in time?
See, it is a very calibrated exaggeration and not an empty talk, because US does not need to threaten Iran a complete annihilation to defeat Iran militarily. This is more of a psychological threat. It means to deter the action before it occurs. Iran understands US military capacity, and the message is not the intent, it is the capability. So we must understand that Trump's statement that we will wipe them off from the face of earth is not a rhetoric, it is a signaling. And it's a classic, deterrence by punishment meant less for Iran alone, it is also for multiple audience, that is the Tehran power centers, the American allies in the Middle East, the domestic voters in the United States. So from military perspective, we know that US has overwhelming escalation dominance. They have their bases, they can control the sea, and Iran also knows that direct assassination of former sitting US president will be treated as an act of war. So crossing that line, even with proxies, Iran will not permit. So the response may not be symbolic, however, it may start using its proxies. So which I think is quite possible, because it is capable of doing so. So Iran's doctrine is not direct confrontation. Iran operates by using Hezbollah, Iraqi militia, Houthis, and cyber units. So this will allow Iran to harass without triggering a full-scale war. And Trump's warning is aimed as collapsing this ambiguity that he's telling Iran proxies that we will not allow you any insulation and we will kill you wherever you are. So geopolitically, this also assures Israel, Saudi Arabia and UAE, wherever these are the bases of America are there, that please do not be nervous, even if Iran is expanding its influence post-Gaza war. At the same time, Russia and China are also put in a delicate situation. So neither Iran, US want any disruption in energy routes, but both want that this entanglement should remain free.
All right, sure. Thank you then very much, Himanshu Singh, for joining me in this discussion. And with that, viewers, we're now going to move ahead. Now, Egypt has accepted US President's invitation to join the Board of Peace Initiative, which aims to end the conflict in Gaza and address global disputes. Egypt's foreign ministry confirmed the acceptance, commending Trump's Middle East policies and expressing support for the board's second phase to end the Gaza conflict. However, Norway has decided not to participate in the initiative in its current form. Separately, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan discussed the situation in Syria and Gaza with Trump in a telephonic call. Erdogan expressed Turkey's concern for Syria's unity and territorial integrity and thanked Trump for the invitation to join the Board of Peace. Trump's plan for Gaza, which includes supervising the region's temporary governance, is concerns for many rights experts who view it as a colonial-style structure. Diplomats also worry it could undermine the United Nations. The board, which is chaired by Trump, includes figures like Secretary of State Marco Rubio, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. I now welcome Mohammed Osman, Middle East expert, in this discussion. Osman joins us from Cairo. Thanks very much for joining us, Osman. Firstly, let's begin with US relations with Egypt. What does Trump have to gain from Egypt, and what can Egypt really bring to the Board of Peace?
Well, of course, Egypt is a strategic partner of the United States in the Middle East region. This is a partnership that dates back to 1979. So it's a very long-term relationship that, even though it had its ebbs and flows, yet both sides are committed to cementing this relationship and maintaining it despite the challenges and actually disagreements, sometimes substantial disagreements on a variety of files, including at many points the Palestinian cause and the situation in Gaza. Egypt and the United States both played a very pivotal role in the mediation of the ceasefire in Gaza. Egypt led, along with Qatar, the mediation, especially the delivering the viewpoint of the Palestinian factions, while the United States, of course, negotiated on behalf of Israel. And basically, even though it is biased towards Israel, it was a mediator of necessity because it is the only party that is capable of applying any actual pressure on the Israeli side. So both sides, Egypt and Israel and the United States, are partners in the brokering of the ceasefire and the Trump plan per se in Gaza, and both of them are responsible for, along with other stakeholders, of course, for supervising its implementation. The Board of Peace, of course, is supposed to be the overarching entity that will overlook or supervise the implementation of the Gaza deal. It subordinated to it is the Executive Council, which includes several officials from several states and several parties in general, and also the Palestinian National Committee, which will govern the Gaza Strip. So Egypt accepted membership in this Board of Peace out of its commitment to advancing the peaceful settlement of the conflict in Gaza and to stabilize the ceasefire and prevent the situation from sliding once more into open warfare. The Egyptian President al-Sisi is in Davos, and he is supposed to meet today with President Trump on the margins of the conference of the World Economic Forum, and they will probably discuss the Gaza deal and the implementation of the second phase of the Gaza deal, and also definitely Egyptian-US bilateral relations.
All right, Osman, we've already seen how Trump has threatened to punish France for not accepting the invitation. Now, Norway has also rejected. What consequences do you think it can face, or any other countries that refuse to be part of the Board of Peace?
I think countries that are refusing membership, especially European countries at this point, are out of fear that the United States is attempting to establish this Board of Peace as basically something that will stand instead of the an alternative to the United Nations. And of course, this is something that the Europeans have great concerns about, especially given that US-European tensions have risen to unprecedented levels over the US ambitions or urges to, overt urges even, to annex Greenland. And the Board of Peace is rumored to be, it's supposed to be, it's planned to become an international organization, according to some sources. President Trump will launch the Board of Peace tomorrow and will reportedly sign a treaty that will launch this entity, which means that it will be a permanent entity, and it will not only be responsible or specialized with dealing with the Gaza issue. It will actually be a platform for conflict resolution, according to President Trump, especially that countries now that will join will have to pay a membership fee of $1 billion, according to the US administration. So it seems that the Europeans fear that the United States is trying to create an alternative international system that is unilateral, that does not uphold the consensus of nations with regards to international law and international institutions. So therefore, they have their skepticism and their fears about joining this entity, especially with the rising tensions over Greenland.
All right, Osman, do stay on with us as we move. Some more news now coming in. Viewers, China is saying its plans for a new embassy in London fully comply with international diplomatic practice and local laws. The statement comes after Britain approved plans for China to build its largest embassy in Europe. The UK government hopes the move will help stabilize ties with Beijing, but the decision has triggered sharp criticism from British and US politicians. They warn the site could be used for spying. China has rejected those claims. Its foreign ministry says hosting and supporting diplomatic premises is a legal obligation of the host country. Opponents of the so-called mega embassy are now pushing back. Some, including Hong Kong activists living in Britain, say the approval threatens their safety. They have vowed to take legal action. Let's hear some statements.
为外交馆舍建设提供支持和便利是东道国的国际义务。中国驻英国使馆新馆舍规划设计是一个高质量的方案，申请及获批完全遵循国际外交惯例及当地的法规及程序。
All right, I request Usman to join me back in the discussion here. Usman, is one to believe that the United Kingdom is not prepared in its own country to oversee any surveillance attempts by a foreign country, and that too from an embassy building?
I think that this resonates with the wider picture of tensions between Europe and the United States at this point. For years, Britain has refused China's the plans for a new embassy in the critical downtown area near the Tower of London, near the financial district, and there were fears that this mega embassy building, which is very close and very proximate to some critical fiber optic cables in the city of London, will be used as a bastion for potential surveillance and espionage, especially that China has refused repeatedly to hand over the full blueprints of its plans to build the embassy on the allotted land slots, claiming that this is a diplomatic mission and it is entitled to its own sovereignty and immunity per international law. And this is true, by the way. So they are not obliged really to offer all the details at the same time. So, but at the same time, the United Kingdom seems to have approved rather suddenly the building of the embassy at a time where tensions are rising between Europe in general and the United States. And it seems that certain elements within the European Union, and maybe even Britain and Canada at the same time, are making overtures to the Chinese side as a hedging maneuver in order to pressure the United States into backing down from its unilateral policies. President Macron yesterday spoke about the necessity of more Chinese investments in the European Union. Chinese investments in the European Union are modest. $60 billion, I believe, or $70 billion, and they pale in comparison, for example, to EU investments in China, which exceed $250 billion. In the case of the United Kingdom, they are even more modest, barely $5 billion of Chinese investments in the economy. So they want to attract Chinese investors. They want to also engage in a dialogue with China to remedy the huge trade deficit between Britain and China. So it seems that this is a step of rapprochement, so that China would be more open and more positive to engaging in actual dialogue with both the United Kingdom and Europe to counterbalance US unilateralism.
Okay, Osman, thank you very much then for joining me in this discussion. It was a pleasure to have you. And with that, viewers, we have some breaking news coming in. And now US President Donald Trump has in fact arrived in Switzerland for high-level talks in Davos. He is set to meet world leaders on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum. Trump has arrived in Davos in Switzerland for the World Economic Forum summit, and those are the visuals of Trump departing his plane as he arrives for the World Economic Forum summit. The visit comes as global leaders are going to discuss economic uncertainty, security challenges, and ongoing geopolitical conflicts. Trump's meetings are expected to focus on trade, global growth, and international security. All right, viewers, the fresh visuals of Trump arriving at Davos in Switzerland to take part in the World Economic Forum. He will in fact be addressing the World Economic Forum in a short while from now. He will also be meeting world leaders as Europe weighs a response to Trump's acquisition threat of Greenland. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has also said that the UK is letting us down by handing over sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, and amidst this, US President has now landed in Davos. Earlier in Davos, UK Chancellor Rachel Reeves had said that she would never rule anything out when asked if the UK would impose retaliatory tariffs on the US. Remember, Trump's visit in Europe coming amidst his threat of tariffs on the continent over the question of Greenland. Trump has said that he will add a 10% tariff to goods imported from 8 European countries that oppose his plan to take over Greenland. And in fact, this is also coming as Trump has announced his board of peace for the reconstruction of Gaza, where at least 60 countries have been invited, but France was the first one to decline that invitation, followed by Norway. On Tuesday, French President Macron said that European Union could consider a series of retaliatory options, including a trade bazooka that involves invoking instruments under the European Union's anti-coercion measures. The US presidential plane Air Force One has touched down on the tarmac in Zurich. And first on the day's agenda for President Trump is a reception with business leaders before he makes a speech to the World Economic Forum later. The European Union-US trade deal that's been in the works since July is being it's being suspended, and later today we're expecting a news conference from the chair of European President's International Trade Committee, Bernd Lang, about that. So it's a day that's likely to bring big developments as far as global politics is concerned. Now, with the midterms in US later this year, they could push the president to tone down his use of tariffs as well. And joining me now in this discussion is Ross Feingold, who's a political analyst, and he joins us from Taipei in Taiwan. Ross, thanks very much for joining me in this discussion. A big day. Trump in Switzerland already landed in Davos. He's going to be meeting with the business leaders, of course, before he addresses the World Economic Forum. What do you think is going to be some of the major news points from Trump's visit in Davos?
There's two separate tracks here. One is kind of the overall geopolitics and foreign relations and the U.S. diplomatic relationships with other countries, including most notably countries in Europe, obviously with the Greenland issue being in the news. Of course, the war in Ukraine is ongoing and unresolved as well. But keeping in mind, this is also a meeting about economics and about business and trade, and there are a lot of CEOs attending. So a lot of the focus will also be, of course, on tariffs. Where do we stand? Where are we going to go with U.S. tariffs? And also just generally Trump's policies towards the domestic economy. Obviously, the U.S. economy is the driver of global growth. So I think a lot of CEOs are also trying to understand what Trump's policies are going to be towards a range of domestic economic questions as well. And there's a lot on the agenda in that regard. There's the selection of a new chairman of the Fed that's going to play out over the coming months. There's a lot of discussion recently about things like credit card interest rates. President Trump is very interested in mortgage rates and the housing market as well. So again, I think there's also going to be a lot of focus on domestic economic policy decisions.
Sure. Now, Trump's speech is also to focus on an America first approach, and then he's likely to touch down on Venezuela and Greenland. Do you think he will be received well when he speaks on those issues and receive the cooperation that he is expecting from NATO?
Well, there are going to be critics. We know that. But there are also going to be a lot of countries that are fairly friendly to President Trump. He does have good relationships and support with leaders in different parts of the world, including some in Europe, but also in Central and South America, which has been the focus of so much discussion. The trend at the moment is for leaders in that region to be generally supportive of Trump administration policies, whether that has to do with migration issues and returning illegal immigrants from the United States to the countries from where they came, talking about China's activities in Central and South America. Again, the trend at the moment seems to be for governments in the region to cooperate with U.S. Requests in that regard. And Trump has hosted leaders from Africa. He's had a great relationship with a number of the leaders from the Middle East, not just Netanyahu, but the Persian Gulf countries as well. So it's easy to criticize President Trump, and I'm sure we'll see a lot of that from the mainstream media. But we should also keep in mind that he does get along well with a lot of world leaders as well. And even though there's going to be focus on the Greenland issue for sure, that's not the one and only issue that leaders of other countries want to engage with President Trump about.
All right, Ross, thanks for your assessment. Do stay on with me, as I'm also joined in now by Frederick H. Fleets, who's former U.S. government official and serving since January 2022 as Vice Chairman of the America First Policy Institute in the Center for American Security Department. Frederick, thanks very much for joining me. We've learned how Trump's focus on his speech is going to be on his MAGA approach. What do you think are going to be some of the key topicing points in his speech today?
Well, it's going to be a very different Davos summit, which usually is devoted to climate change and fairly liberal global topics. I think that it's going to be dominated by Trump. This is his first Davos summit in his second term. He has a large team with him. I think he'll be talking about his foreign policy and economic accomplishments, especially the Gaza peace deal, how he dealt with Iran, Venezuela, his efforts to end the war in Ukraine. There'll be a lot of discussion about Greenland, but I think the Greenland issue will be moved to some pretty serious negotiations between U.S. and European officials. And I think Trump is going to try to focus on the main security threats facing the U.S. and its allies. And I think those are China and Russia.
All right, Frederick requested to stay on with us. We're now getting the visuals of Trump deboarding Air Force One. He's now landing in Davos, deboarding Air Force One, and Trump on the tarmac there at Zurich Airport. Live visuals are now coming in. All right, Trump made a brief conversation with the officials there, and he's now proceeding to join the World Economic Forum. Remember, viewers, Trump's speech is going to focus on America first. He may also touch on Greenland and Venezuela. Trump in Davos is also going to be discussing the Board of Peace and hemispheric domination. All right. I request Frederick to join me back in the discussion here. Frederick, what do you see Trump speaking on the Board of Peace? We've already seen how Macron has declined that invitation, followed by Norway. While most countries have accepted, some have also said it's an honor for them to be part of the Board of Peace. But there are several contentions on that very idea, with some even calling it the mini UN of Donald Trump.
Trump wants the Board of Peace to be effective, and he also wants to push forward this Gaza peace plan, which is moving more slowly than he expected. I thought it would be difficult to move forward. It would take work to get Hamas to stay on board. By adding Russia and China to this board, he's trying to increase the board's legitimacy, to make it harder for certain countries to interfere with or stop this process. But it also was a recognition by the Trump administration that the UN has been extremely unhelpful in solving security issues concerning Israel. It's been terribly anti-Israel during its history. This is an alternative to the very biased anti-Israel United Nations. I think it's a smart move.
All right, sure. Frederick, thanks very much then for joining me in this discussion. Viewers, those are the fresh visuals now that we are bringing you on from Davos in Switzerland, where US President Donald Trump has just arrived, and he's headed to deliver his address there before after meeting the business leaders and World Economic Forum. All right, viewers, those were the visuals of Trump arriving at Davos for the World Economic Forum. We're going to bring you every detail from that event. Do stay tuned to NewsX World for all the latest from the World Economic Forum and from around the world.